Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Yarns with Andy. Today, I've got James Braddock from QBS. He's a senior project manager there. Mate, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, cool. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, chippy by trade or builder, for those that don't understand what chippy means. Sort of in the
Construction podcast, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm pretty sure they don't know what chippy means,
A few people will still be like, huh?
Huh?
Yeah, residential builder. Sort of came up through the ranks doing an apprenticeship and sort of got in running my own business, which still sort of works in the background. Any work I get, I feed on to other builders. I've done some stints in, interior spaces in the commercial space, sort of a semi-commercial project management role, a stint in construction technology over in Australia. And then
That's
came
pretty
back
cool.
and came into QBS doing sort of high-end residential renovations, new builds and developments and things like that.
Cool.
So, yeah.
That's awesome, mate. So, James, we've got clients, right? Clients that want to build stuff, right? They don't necessarily fully understand the process of construction.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Whose responsibility do you think it is to actually educate the clients?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's quite topical for me and what I do at QBS because, we always say we're taking someone's hopes and dreams and a lot of their life savings and we're kind of pumping into one building, one development or one home or one renovation. I think it kind of goes, it's three-pronged. Like a lot of it needs to be on the client themselves. Like I think they need to seek out the information. Where the industry needs to be better, both builder and architect, is in providing collateral for that information. So I feel like a lot of that is kept in-house, particular building companies or individual architectural firms, or even structural engineers, where they keep that information and how they talk to their clients and educate them on what the process is going to be like in-house, and it's not shared across the industry. There's not a podcast that sits there and goes, hey, this is what you're in for. This is a step-by-step on a new build if you're doing it. This is a step-by-step.
Actually, I think there is one. There's one on renovations.
Oh, renovations with Jen or
Jen Jones. Yeah, Jen Jones. She's been a guest of this podcast as well.
She's great. I think she has a particular spin on how she does her stuff.
Yeah.
And it's definitely getting there. But I think the general population who come into it, probably if they don't find that podcast or that bit of collateral, they're not going to know about, what a PC sum is versus a fixed price, what a charge up plus margin contract looks like, or, a breakdown of all of those things involved in there. I think my personal take, and this is obviously I'm biased being a builder, I think a lot more has to be put on the architect.
On the architect themselves?
The architect, yeah.
So where do you think a project management consultant firm would fit into this?
In residential, it's probably going to start to come in more and more.
Yep.
Obviously in commercial space, which you're well familiar with,
yes.
There's a lot of consultant PMs or postmen, as we call them.
We call them postmen.
I've been there. I did 4 months stint at a consultancy firm, so I know what it's like to be a postman.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that.
Well, that is the truth, though, isn't it?
It is, yeah. They're neither influencing design, they're neither influencing cost, they're neither influencing quality. They're purely there to take a piece of information from a client who's got the money and an architectural firm or a design firm that's basically going, this is what we want, and they're facilitating requests for proposals.
I'll tell you what, I've been saying that over and over again. It's actually refreshing to hear somebody else say it.
Well, I think they're beneficial in some circumstances. If you're building a warehouse in Penrose, I don't think you need a consultant PM firm. Like if you don't have a main contractor that has the facilities to undertake that part of the project with their own PMs, find someone else.
Yeah.
There's plenty of them out there.
Yeah,
There's plenty of them out there that will do it. So I think, going back to what we're saying, I think the architects have to be that conduit, especially in residential, because I just don't think it's already expensive enough. I mean, we're just seeing reports coming out last week of it's 50% more expensive to build a house in New Zealand compared to Australia. So, if you've got a $500,000...
That's crazy though, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
$500,000 build in New Zealand, $750. $500,000 in Australia, $750 here. I mean, that's wild. And we don't make as much money. And I think what people forget is to make $750,000, you've got to basically make $1 million to be able to pay $750,000.
Yeah,
because
with
you've
your
got tax and everything like that. So it's when you say that to people, it blows their mind. So I think a lot has to go on the architect. I think some do a great job. Some can definitely do better. And then it does come down to the builder, like early contractor involvement or ECI,
Yeah.
even in residential construction, is super important.
But I mean, it does boil down to how you run that ECI period, because I've seen ECIs run really, really well.
Yeah.
And I've seen ECIs not run so well.
Terribly.
Yeah.
Again, it depends on the team. Like if you've got an architect and, as you know, in the more commercial and infrastructure space, a planner that's willing to work on that process, it can be super beneficial.
Yeah.
And has a lot of insight. And I think everyone comes out with a lot more, a lot richer for the experience. If you've got a roadblock in there, someone that's an old school mentality, no, that's not how we've done it. Back in my day, we did this worked. You're going to run into roadblocks and it's not going to be beneficial. And everyone's going to come out of it going, I hate ECI. It's a waste of time. Let's not do it. So I think it has its pros and cons. I mean, what we do is multi-million-dollar houses. You're kind of in that $3 to $7 million space and renovations and things like that. So I think we can really influence design.
Yeah.
And cost.
Working closely with the builder.
Yeah.
And you know where I've always seen the value of a good ECI though is you clearly understand what the risks are.
Yes.
And you then allocate the right people to manage the right risks.
Correct.
Who's best placed to manage that risk, manages that risk.
Yeah.
But what happens in a traditional contract format, shit flows downhill.
Yep.
It's just like, I don't want to take that risk, push it down. You know, next person doesn't want to take it, push it down.
Yeah.
The subcontractor is held holding all that risk.
Well, I mean,
or the main contractor.
Slightly off topic, but
it's a little off topic. My bad.
We'll jump into it anyway. Like I worked for a company called Stanley and Tord, who unfortunately went into liquidation.
Damn.
We were doing a whole bunch of Housing New Zealand projects, and talk about an organisation that.
Hang on. How'd you go on liquidation working for a Housing New Zealand project?
I think it's if you're doing this is my theory. It's questionable theory, but it's mine, and I'll stick with it.
Yeah.
I think if you've got more than 25 to 30% of your portfolio as a construction company in Housing New Zealand or Kaungaroa, I think you're on a road to receivership, would be my take on it. And I think that comes down
so KO are government funded, yeah?
Correct.
They're funded by the Crown.
Yep.
How do you go into receivership when you're actually building a government project?
So there's the triangle of construction.
Yeah, time, cost, quality.
Cost, quality. You can only have two of them. You can't have all three of them. You can push the bubbles together as much as you want. The only thing that government agencies are worried about is cost. Cost and time. They're not that worried about the quality, so they'll go for the cheapest quote, the cheapest thing. So then it's a fight to the bottom. So you've got four construction companies trying to vie for one $26 million project, and they're all trying to get the cheapest possible price, and then they screw the next person down and the next person down, and it filters all the way.
So I've always said that, right? Our procurement model really fucking needs to change.
Oh, it's terrible.
But
shocking.
60% weightage is always given to cost, 40% to non-price attributes. You look at that and you go, you're promoting bad behaviors in this industry. You're saying there's nothing more important than cost.
Correct. And then we wonder why
your mental well-being is not a priority. Nothing else is a fucking priority. You going home at 5 o'clock every day is not a priority.
Nope.
I want the cheapest price.
Yeah, you're there 6 days a week, 7 days a week if it needs it, and this is our time frame, and this is what we've got to work to. So I mean that has a lot to answer for, and again, that's just knowledge in the industry, going from those types of clients all the way through to the residential clients I deal with today, and I've worked with commercial guys in the past. There's not enough information out there. People aren't seeking it out as a client. The architects aren't handing it out as the architect, and us as builders, and this is where I'm biased, we get lumped with it. In the end, the clients come to site. We start ripping their house apart or building their new building, or we're building a supermarket or a warehouse or whatever. And then all of a sudden the questions start flying like, why am I getting a bill from the structural engineer? I thought that was covered in your contract. And it's like, no, that's a professional services fee that's paid for separate by the client direct with the engineer.
Yeah.
Oh, and why is the architect charging me fees? And it's like, well, that's your agreement and contract with them. And you sort of start to feel like you're explaining the bad news bear is what we call it. So every Monday or every Thursday, you've got the client comes in for a meeting and you're like, sorry, mate, a bit more bad news. This has happened, and these are the variations, or this is the added cost. And then by the end of the meeting, you can see them pulling their hair out, just frustrated.
Yeah, but we definitely need to do a better job educating all our clients.
We do,
all the clients.
Across
anyways.
the board.
Yeah. James, construction is seen as a very blue-collared, male-dominated industry.
Yep.
What are your views around that?
Yeah, so I think
why
it's definitely it's starting to change slowly. Like we've had at QBS, we've had a number of female apprentices, and one of our builders, Bex the Builder. She had a pretty decent Instagram following. Should be a good actual guest for you as well.
Oh yeah, sweet.
She sort of rose up through the ranks and became like a foreman for us as well, and she's now moved on to Unispace as a PM, which is pretty cool. And so we had a couple of apprentices sort of working underneath her and alongside the team, and they're great. And we they have a different way of looking at things, a different eye for detail to more of a male builder. But I think it's seen as rough and ready. Like I remember I was at high school and I was in my final year, and we're talking 2006. And sort of looking at options and going, cool, I've been in schooling for 13 years. I don't want to go straight into university. Was pretty keen at that point doing an architectural degree. But for family reasons and all that sort of stuff, sort of went, cool, I think a trade's going to be better suited to what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And I had a deputy principal at school, and he was like, you're wasting your talents. You're wasting all your potential. You're wasting everything you've worked towards over the last 13 years at school and the 5 years at high school. Why are you wasting that on becoming a builder? And I sort of remember going, really poignant moment for me, going,
interesting.
Well, I'm going to prove you wrong, for one. And so when I started my business and I had sort of 11 people working for me, I went back and did a talk at the school when we started taking on kids through the Gateway program.
Oh, yeah. Is that like an apprenticeship program?
Yeah, so it's like 1 day a week, kids in 6th and 7th form can go out of class for the day and go into a trade environment or like a warehouse or logistics or plumbing, all that sort of stuff. And they just sort of learn the trade and see if they want to go into it as a career.
Yeah.
And so I did a big talk on that alongside sort of bullying and that sort of stuff. And I remember sort of meeting him in the hallway and going, oh, did all right for a guy that wasn't going to amount to anything, didn't I? So it was a nice.
What was his response?
He sort of went red-faced, and the principal, who I knew quite well, the new principal, he sort of goes, all right, James, let's go. Time for a beer, mate. Let's sort of carry on, and then moved on. But so I think that stigma, it sort of ties into the male-dominated and the blue-collar, I think, because it is a hard industry. Like and I'm sure we'll touch on.
It takes a special kind of person to be in this industry,
and
it can be fucking brutal.
Oh, massively. We've had some terrible pranks go wrong on site.
Oh, you've got pranks on site?
Oh, yeah.
Shit.
Bananas getting cut open with a Stanley knife and injected with sunscreen. So the guy goes to eat it at lunchtime, and all of a sudden he's got a mouthful of sunscreen. Guy's working on the plank above him on a scaffold, and he gets his shoelaces tied together so he falls over. Locked in portaloos, dragged around farm paddocks, sitting inside a portaloo, locked in ceiling spaces. Classic one, sent down to Bunnings to get a left-handed screwdriver. That's always a good one. Or down to the site manager. Go ask the site manager for a long wait.
Is the site manager's what?
Just go ask the site manager for a long wait.
A long wait?
Yeah. Or just, can you research where we can get some sky hooks so we can lift this bin up? Like, just terrible things. And I mean, a lot of it's in jest. And my take on that is to put the serious part to it is each generation of builder needs to be better than the generation before them. So if we got treated like crap and treated like shit, then it's our job to not do that to the next people. Similar to when you have children. Like if you've had an upbringing and you go, cool, these are the things I like, these are the things I don't like. It's your job as a parent to go, cool, well, I want to be 10, 15, 20% better than that with my children.
Yeah.
And I think the same can be said for our apprentices in construction across the board, plumbing, electrical, the whole lot. And I think a part of that stigma where it's kind of like a boys' club. There's a lot of sexual innuendos on site. There's a lot of, swearing and carrying on and all that sort of stuff. And that's how it's seen from the outside. So people, it's quite abrasive to some people.
That perception does exist.
It does, 100%.
Yeah.
And so I think people think that that's what construction's going to be like. So that leads to it being more male-dominated and a harder entry for females. And I mean, just take a portaloo on site.
Yeah.
Guys don't like using the portaloos on site.
Yeah,
and, the majority of what we're doing is standing when we're in there. If you're a female coming to site, you don't want to go into a portaloo.
Yeah.
So it's even just those subtle changes that you're starting to see happen in the industry where there are either, unisex, proper plumbed in toilet blocks or a separate portaloo that is designated for females.
Which is becoming quite common on sites these days.
I think it should be on every site.
So most of the commercial sites that I go onto, they're proper plumbed toilets, male, female.
Yeah.
And some of them even go beyond, and they have sanitary products for women in the toilet itself, which is awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's great.
Yeah, because you don't want to, one of my guests told me earlier, I think as a female, you do not want to walk through the office carrying your sanitary products. And which is just common sense, right? Things that I never thought about.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think if you look at those barriers alone, like it's always deemed as like a boys' club.
Yep.
It's got there's a lot of jokes and I guess bullying. Let's just call it what it is. Like the apprentices do suffer an element of bullying.
Yeah.
So I think that in itself is a barrier for a lot of people. And then you go and try and encourage more females to come into the industry. Those things are going to be even more of a barrier to them. The one thing I have noticed is when they come in and they get past that initial barrier, they are often some of the most successful people on site.
Yeah.
I
What do you think we can do differently to change
so
the mindset, change the perception of people?
So there's a couple of guys, the Trade Up Co guys, go around and they've got an Instagram page and they do sort of like vlogs and that sort of stuff. They go around sites and they sort of chat to people and get an insight into how they work on site and what their day entails. I think those candid, off the cuff things are becoming more and more apparent. I think, especially in our space, in the resi space, like a lot of guys are spending a lot of time and money investing into the marketing of what they do. So it's a day in the life of their foreman, a day in the life of their apprentice. Someone will go.
I've seen quite a few of those.
Yeah, so I think that's going to help. And then really highlighting, like I think you've got the Women in Construction Awards. BCRTO and MIT are doing a great job. Along with sort of placemakers have their own Apprentice of the Year, and the same with Carters. I think that goes a long way for highlighting women in the industry and sort of just promoting what is the possibility and where they can go and what they can do. Because I think it's the more diverse our industry is, the better it is as a whole.
Yeah, but again, diversity for the sake of diversity is quite dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you got to have the right people and they're doing the right
100% if you don't have the right skill sets.
Correct.
Doing the right job.
Across the board. Like if you're not right for the job, you should move on.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time, we need to remove that stigma of it is a boys' club. We need to make everyone from every walk of life feel comfortable coming on site in the first instance. There's nothing worse. You liken it's your first day at high school as a third former coming into a construction site. You're meeting the foreman or the big boss on site, and the first thing someone says to you is something that ridicules you. And you've got to have thick skin and you've got to be able to push past that. But if we can remove that as a barrier, then you don't have to have as thick a skin.
Yeah.
You don't have to suffer what we suffered through coming up in the industry. And I think if we can get rid of, even just, again, incrementally get better.
Yep.
Each generation of builder and more people are in the industry from all walks of life, male, female.
But think about how amazing construction is just in general, right? It's like you're building tangible shit.
Yeah.
It's amazing, beautiful buildings that are going to last for hundreds of years.
I mean, all you got to do is talk to my wife. Everywhere we drive, I'm like, I built that.
Yeah.
I worked on that. Oh, yeah, that boardwalk through the middle of the park there, that was me.
So
a team of guys. So she eventually goes, shut up.
Exactly. Yeah. So my wife's exactly the same. Yeah. We're walking through Auckland Airport, and like I keep telling my son as well, I'm like, yo, Daddy was part of this project.
Yeah.
And now he goes, tells me, Daddy's part of this project.
Their little puppets, it's so good.
It's amazing. No, that's cool, man. Now, influencing step changes industry, and having a diverse workforce is extremely, extremely crucial for the future of the industry.
It is because I mean, my fear is that it is dying.
Yeah,
like the industry that we knew and the way that it's been done, and it's hampered by so many things. Whether it be logistics or trying to supply chain and all that sort of stuff is hard enough. It's getting more technologically advanced, which I'm sure we'll touch on.
Yeah.
And so you've got all these external factors that make it harder in itself, and then we go ahead and make it harder again with all these barriers to getting into the industry or barriers to being successful at it.
Yeah.
And again, there's no education pathway. There's no collateral information to learn about what it's going to be like unless you get into it. And by then, sometimes it's too late.
Yeah, fair enough. So, James, you worked on some cool construction technology-related things. What? Talk to us about what you've done from a technology perspective, and where do you think the construction technology is going in the future?
Yep.
And how do you believe it's going to help us?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I as in one of my roles, we worked with a company called Conquer, which is basically shortened down for construction QA or quality assurance.
Yeah.
So that's the name, CONQA. And so we were using them on our Housing New Zealand projects to basically facilitate not having to have as many council inspections. So we did a really stringent quality assurance process. So that's how I got introduced to them. And that was kind of my first foray into setting up a bit of construction tech. I mean, you've got your zeros for your timesheets, and I always try and run at least a Trello board for each project where you can do site diaries and update information and things like that, and having good file control. And we've all used Aconex and Procore and all those, but actually delving into a QA, sort of a custom built, bespoke piece of, I wouldn't say it's not bespoke software, but bespoke setup for our company. That was quite an insight for me, and sort of working with them led me to getting a job with them. So they sort of came to me and they said, hey, look, we're needing someone to learn the ropes here in New Zealand for the next couple of months and then move over to our Melbourne office and start tackling the multiplexes and the pro builds and the lend leases and all the big chunky subcontractors over there. So that was a pretty hefty task during COVID as well.
Oh, shit. Right.
So we moved there 4 weeks before they went into their first COVID lockdown in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah.
And we were there for the entire COVID lockdown.
Yeah.
So I sort of was a key account manager, was meant to be meeting with these big builders, wining, dining, showing them how a piece of QA software can...
Next minute you're on Teams.
Yeah, we're on Zoom, doing Zoom meetings, and all of a sudden I'm picking up a sales component, I'm selling software, I'm running the JSON converters to convert it from a spreadsheet into code and getting it into the software, and actually we're trying to get an offline app off the ground and everything like that. So that was a learning curve for me. It was completely taking a different set of my skills and going, cool, I've built houses. How do I build a
software tech business?
A software tech business in a new market where they'd been established, but they didn't have full traction. So that was pretty cool. It was it certainly added a few feathers to my cap, so to speak. But in terms of where I think everyone wants a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
I think no matter what business you're in, and I think in construction there is a real adversity to technology. Like there's that old, I've had this running like this for years. Why do I have to change it?
Is it just adversity or just people not knowing the value of technology?
Definitely. And
it's just going, it's just easier for me to print a set of documents and actually read the drawing as opposed to doing anything else. Yeah.
It's like I can do that with a spreadsheet. Why do I need a piece of software that does it as well? Or I can just send an RFI in an email. Why do I need an RFI program? Yeah. Or I can just take photos for my QA and run a check sheet on a Word document and just copy and paste the photos in. I'm like, yeah, but someone has to do that. Yeah. So my big thing was always, health and safety, I think, has been revolutionized across the industry in terms of tech. Like, I think people can see the benefit of having that. With QA, I always say that QA is health and safety for your business. So it's making sure that your business is still going to be functional in 10 to 15 years' time, that guys are, and it's not defects. That's the thing, is it's creating a short checklist that's under 10 checks that says, hey, this is what we need to be doing at this stage of the build for whoever you are in the industry, and making sure that it's compliant, that the key steps...
Is that what Conquer does?
Yeah, really Conquer does that, yep. And there's a bunch of them out there that do it.
No, yeah.
And then it's
that's the problem. Therein what you said is a problem.
Yeah.
You said there's a bunch of them that do it.
Correct.
Now, let's say you're a builder.
Yeah.
Right? So if I come to you on site and turn and tell you, here's your system for health and safety, here's a system for quality, here's a system for cost management, here's a system for time management, I've just given you 5 bits of software to manage.
And they're $1,000 each month.
That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Pay the money, whatever.
Yeah.
But now you have to spend valuable time understanding 5 bits of information in 5 different softwares.
Yep. And that's
the information
that's
the information from which is not in any central database.
Correct.
They're not interconnected information.
You can interconnect some of them.
Maybe, sure. What are you going to spend another...
Correct.
Another 100,000 sitting and building custom APIs to connect all your data.
Or
what a waste of time.
You're going to...
Because none of that makes you money, right?
No. You're going to a Procore and you're trying to... square peg, round hole. You're trying to shove a square peg that's a piece of software made for the American market into something that works in Australia or New Zealand. Yep. And that is where I think we're starting to see a little bit of a shift. You're getting the Hammertechs out of Australia. You're getting Conquer out of New Zealand. There's VisiBuild. There's some of these big chunky bits of software being made for the New Zealand and Australian markets. But there isn't a one-stop shop. There isn't, you've got Fergus, you've got Tradeify, you've got all these ones that are trying to bridge across multiple aspects of it. I think the reality is that you need 4 to 5 pieces of software to run even a small residential company, whether it be Xero, Build Exact, that's got your financial tracking and scheduling, and then you've got to add in your QA. So if you're going to do like site cam for QA, is what we've been doing at QBS, where that allows you to sort of do RFIs, defects, and a bit of QA at the same time. But then like file control, like
we use OneDrive or whatever.
You can OneDrive it, you can Google Drive it, but if anything was to happen to that, like and then is that transferable across all your team? Like if you've got a foreman on each of the jobs, you're able to give them access easily. And I think that's where the barriers in the software comes, is the tiered permissions. So like, you don't want to pay a full-fledged user license for every single person in your business, or, you know, the director and the senior project managers and the site foreman and all that, because that can get expensive. You're spending upwards of 10 grand a month on software. That just increases your P&G, which increases your overheads in the business.
See, I'm still okay with the cost of a software, right?
Yeah,
that's still okay.
The problem, but I think the industry isn't.
The problem industry isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to pay for the software, bro. You know what I mean? You want to make your life easy. It's a subscription. Yes, pay the fucking subscription, right?
Yeah.
But my problem is, you having 5 bits of software that are not interconnected. It's not having that information in a central data lake that I can extract valuable insights from. I don't think any construction company in New Zealand's cracked that.
No, and I think
I'm even talking about the big boys.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone has. And I think we're even more, like, Australia hasn't cracked it.
Yeah.
And we're a smaller, more unusual market than they are. Like, we do things a little bit differently here than they do it over there in construction. I think if they can't crack it, the only way we're going to crack it is by it being created here. So it has to be more tech being created out of New Zealand that can transpose to Australia.
How are we going to do that when half our workforce is left across the ditch to Australia?
Exactly. So that's where we're up against it the whole time. But I think the biggest barrier is that old school mentality of, we've never had to use tech before.
Yeah.
So we're having to teach people, and I always use this analogy of, my job is quite difficult as a project manager, because I'm dealing with people that might have been 15-year-olds that have dropped out of high school that have come into construction, and they might have a lower socioeconomic background or a lower IQ, all the way out to people that have got doctorates, and engineers and stuff, and guys that have been doing it for 30, 40 years, and everything in between. So you've got people of all these walks of life, all these different things, and I think that is the biggest barrier to tech. Like, the business owner sees the value, because if it saves time, it saves money.
Absolutely.
The clients can see the value, because if it's keeping them informed and keeping them up to date on what's going on site, that's great, and having those insights. It's the guys on the ground. They're the ones that are inputting this data. They're the ones that are bringing it to the forefront for either QA or health and safety or scheduling or all those sorts of things. And it might be the QSs who or the junior QS that has to input all of the financial data into there. And as you say, it's facilitating conversations or links between those bits of software, which I think is where we're lacking. And we don't have, you can go pay thousands of dollars for a Zap to go between them, or an Automate.io to get it done, but you're doing that specifically for you. And I think a lot of guys then turn around and go, I'll make my own software.
Yeah.
And they invest $150,000 into making their own piece of software that's bespoke for their exact business and has no transferable meaning
to any
other business, because the way every business runs is so unique.
Yeah.
That it just makes it's such a challenging thing, but we have to do it because we're so unproductive.
I think we will get there with AI now.
Yes,
and the problems of AI in the market.
As long as they don't take my job, it's fine.
I'm sure AI may replace a few jobs, but am I worried about it? Probably not. No, don't even. Yeah. I mean, can AI sit down and talk to you on a podcast?
Might do.
Might do. You never know. I never say never, eh?
It might not be as funny as us, but
I'll be funny. I don't think
know.
Maybe. Ask the audience.
We'll see what they say.
Yeah. James, mental health is quite an important subject in the construction industry, which is not spoken enough. Yep. Would you agree?
Agree. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we were speaking off camera earlier, and we said the amount of suicides in the male. Sorry, I'll let you finish that sentence.
Yeah. So it's just, I mean, I don't have the stats, and I don't like to pull them specifically, but Mates in Construction is a great organisation which has a whole bunch of resource on this. But in New Zealand, obviously, we have a disproportionate amount of young men that commit suicide in general, which is terrible. And then there is a high proportion of people in the industry of construction across all sectors, all aspects of construction, that do take their own lives as well, both male and female. But obviously, it's a very male-dominated industry, as we've spoken about.
Why do you think that is?
I think there's
a
number of factors in there. I mean, isolation.
Yeah.
So yes, you're working for a large company. You might work for a big, commercial electrical business that has 100 employees, but you might be, a foreman, a tradesman, a third-year apprentice, and a brand new apprentice on site. So you've got a hierarchy. The apprentice doesn't generally talk to the foreman. The foreman doesn't generally talk to the third-year apprentice. So you've got this hierarchy of where you're able to talk to above and below. And I think that isolation can create some issues. I think in residential as well, You generally start off in a small company, you work your way up, and then you become qualified, you do a couple of jobs as a foreman, and then everyone has this idea they want to run their own business. So you then jump into a 90-hour-a-week job, running your own business. You're 60 hours a week on the tools, you're 30 hours a week doing paperwork, you're sweeping, you're QSing, you're liaising with clients, paying bills, paying guys.
Sounds like a bit of experience, Stockton.
Yeah. Done it for a while, and you can fall into a hole. Like you can fall into
I know that. Yep.
A dark hole, and I think the hours don't help either.
No, they don't. Just personally for me, when I started strategic planning, I told my wife we'll either be completely broke, or I'll be extremely busy. I'm not sure which one, but I know one of the two is going to happen. Or both. Who knows, right? And I became extremely busy, and I don't think I was in a very good space mentally. To be honest, and I had to go get help.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is like don't be afraid to get help, and help can be multiple things. Like it can be people think getting help is talking to a counselor or going to see a therapist. It can be that, and I think those are really beneficial things, and I've done both of those things on a regular basis, and I think they're really good. And they can help you through certain aspects of life. They don't have to be a continuous thing. They can just be for a period of time.
Yeah.
But I think it's also prioritizing time away from site, and that can be, as I said, we start early and we finish late. But if you're putting into your diary or putting into your calendar the things that you need, so if it's making sure as
your non-negotiables,
a manager in a business that you're taking a lunch break when the guys aren't on lunch, so you're having time aside from them on your own to decompress. You might go for a walk, you might go down the road and get a coffee or whatever that is. It's that, and then also for me, like I prioritize going to the gym.
Yeah, me too.
I used to be a lot more. I used to be quite overweight, so I lost a whole bunch of weight. And so for me now, it's a non-negotiable. Like if I've got to leave site at 4:00 to go get a gym session in, and I do CrossFit style stuff, so we have set gym times.
Which gym do you go to? BFT?
CrossFit.
CrossFit. CrossFit. In
Rosedale.
I got F45.
Oh, we won't get into that.
We won't get into that. Listen, no, we're good.
But for me, that's where I get my outlet. So I have a set class. It's either 4:30, 5:30, or 6:15. So I make one of those classes or two of them every night.
Yeah.
And so for me, if that means I've got a deadline to leave site, I'm more efficient to get my work done to get out of there. Because if I don't do that,
then you're not
2 days in a row,
Yeah.
my mind isn't right.
Yeah.
But I think also aside from that is people feel guilty if they take time for themselves before going home to their families. I'm sure you've felt it.
Yeah, I've 100% felt it because I used to work with a great mental health coach, Drew Knowles. Yeah. I'll introduce you if you're interested.
Yeah.
Mate, man's a fucking genius. Like he's literally saved my life.
Which is good. That's what
literally saved my life. So when I was working with him, he got me to do this one quite interesting thing. In the middle of my work day, he said, book in your calendar now that you're taking Paru out for a movie. Like Paru's my wife, right? I gone out for a movie. And it was midday, right? I was like, I'm not doing that. Like this feels so fucking weird.
Yeah.
He's like, no, book it in. You'll thank me for it later.
Yeah.
And me and the missus went out. We had a great movie time. Middle of the day. It's like, midday movie. We had a nice lunch, got back home.
Sounds dreamy.
And I just felt weird doing it. But I'm thankful for him to, I needed his help and that push to do it. Now I'm like, maybe, I've overworked, I'm a bit stressed,
Correct.
I need to take some time out and go out with the missus. Yes, I hit the gym every day. That's fine. But then I need to do other things around to retain my sanity.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I heard it on an Australian podcast about, it's by Hamish Blake and it's called How Other Dads Dad.
Oh, yeah.
He was an AFL player and he said, it seems dreamy. You go out and you train and you play and you do all this stuff. And he goes, I live an hour out of town from where I train. He said, but every night on my way home, I stop and I go to the beach and I have a swim and I sit for half an hour. And he said, then when I go home to my wife and kids, I'm in a much better decompressed state. I've got all my bullshit out of the day and I've let that fall away from me and I'm able to be present and more interactive with my children, focused, there for my wife. Yeah. And so I think that comes into it in construction. Like we leave when it's dark, we get home when it's dark. But I think guys need to start prioritizing, guys and girls, they need to start prioritizing time for themselves. If it's in the middle of the day, like you said, booking a movie in with the wife or a lunch break, get them to come over to buy one of your sites and have some time together with the kids or whatever that is during school holidays or if they're young enough. Or if it's, going and doing a yoga session, going for a swim, just going for a walk before you walk in the door. Because like we do get burdened with a lot of things in all walks of life in the industry we choose to have as a career.
Yeah.
Construction especially, like it's you've got time pressure, you've got cost pressure, you've got long hours. It's cold in the middle of winter, hot in the middle of summer, and if you're not prioritizing something as an outlet outside of that, that is a big, it's going to become a big issue for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think also having people to talk to. So if
Yeah.
it's a group of mates, you might not be from the same industry.
Yep.
Some of them will be. And I think having those, like for all the brothers is great, sort of construction related as well. That's really cool to be able to sit down and have chats with those guys about what's going on. But it's just ripping that Band-Aid off and going, my week's been real shit.
Yeah.
I've had a fucking terrible week this week.
Yeah.
And then instead of guys going, oh, you'll be right, mate, harden up, she'll be sweet, it's going, oh,
Pop
what's
a
going
concrete
on?
pill. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
Fucking hell. I
Make
hate
yourself
that
a
saying.
coffee, go over to the cement bag, grab a teaspoon, chuck it in and harden up. The amount of times I've heard that, it's and we've got to stop that. Like, it's not about hardening up, it's about actually sharing, because there's too many people taking their own lives in this country in general, and there's too many people taking their own lives that work in construction because of the isolation, the hours, the pressure. Financial pressure is a big one. You've got a lot of small business owners in construction, same as in farming and agriculture, and they're isolated.
Yeah.
They're out on their own. They feel like they're doing it on their own. They've got no one to have a stopgap sort of there in the background. They might not have a family.
I can completely relate to that,
Yeah.
because for the longest period of time, like I've tried explaining to my wife what I do for a living,
Yeah.
right? And maybe I didn't do a real good job of explaining exactly what I do.
I'm sure you did. But
I tried.
yeah,
I tried.
That's all you can do.
Yeah. And I don't think she still fully understands exactly what I do. Like,
No.
and yeah.
And I don't think you can unless you live it.
Yeah.
Like, you probably don't fully understand what she does every day.
I probably don't. No.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
That's the isolation bit. So then as a small business owner, now I got isolated and I went, the only person I can really talk to apart from having meetings on Teams is my wife.
Yeah.
She doesn't fucking get me fully. So, I mean, all the work I do as a person, she does understand me.
So
but
you started a podcast.
this podcast is great, eh? Like, I can just sit there and have a rant.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's important. You raise a very important point there, right? Yeah,
So
a lot of people are isolated.
Yeah, if it's scheduling a driving range session with 4 of your mates or 4 people that you've met in the industry, if they're all walks of life and stuff. Like we have a group of us that do every Christmas Eve. We'll all get together and have a blowout and hang out and talk about the year and what's coming up. But, I've got my gym friends that I have an outlet with, and then I've got guys, and one of my university lecturers, Vince May, shout out to him, great dude. He always said that the industry that we work in, we're not brain surgeons, we're not heart surgeons. You haven't got someone's head or heart open on a table. So if something's stressing you out or you don't have an answer, put the jug on, make a cup of tea, make a coffee, put your feet up on the desk, close the door, call someone. Like, everyone's got those 5-6 people in their phone that they can call to bounce an idea off.
Yeah.
And I think if you haven't got those people starred in your phone, and I do it with one of my good mates, he'll call me and be like, hey mate, how's it going? And I'm like, all right, run me through it. We don't even have to, no preamble, no nothing. I'm like, straight to it. We're all busy. What's going on? Like, what's causing you an issue today that you need to unload on me?
Yeah, good on you.
Because things in our minds always become so much worse, and we build them up, and we create.
When you internalize it.
Oh, we massively internalize it, and we're terrible at that as males in general.
Yeah.
And then construction workers are probably worse at it again.
Yeah.
But as soon as that's out, like, the weight lifts off you, and if you talk to someone who's from that industry that knows that pain or understands a little bit of what you're going through, I think that can really help.
Yeah.
And so I think that's that's a really good avenue, is making sure you've got those groups
Yeah.
that you can go to and have a chat with.
So summarize that in 3 sentences for me, for everybody, for the audience.
Obviously, mental health is super important.
Yes,
Part of the
extremely.
mental health, I would break that down into sort of 3 factors for me to keep my mental health stable and on the straight and narrow. Gym, diet, and surrounding yourself with good fucking people.
So that's solid advice right there, mate. There you go.
Yeah.
So there's some good advice for you guys. And advice from James. So James, I have something interesting I'd like to try today. A new segment.
All for it.
All for it?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, it's called Myth or Fact.
Okay.
Right? It's very construction industry related.
Cool.
And we've kind of incorporated some of your working history into it as well, if we could. I mean, like, not directly, but related
I was
to.
going to say, hopefully I get it right.
Okay, so myth or fact. The Beehive in Wellington was constructed to resemble a beehive?
I'm going to go fact.
Fact?
Yeah.
Bang on. The beehive located in the New Zealand Parliament complex was designed to resemble a traditional woven Maori storage basket, which often compares to a beehive.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, cool. Next one.
Yep.
The Christchurch Cathedral was completely destroyed by the 2011 earthquake. Myth or fact?
Oh, myth. It's not completely destroyed.
Yeah,
There's
bang on.
remnants of it there.
Yep.
It might, I mean, it essentially was.
So I don't know if you heard the news in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
They need another
funding
50.
short.
They need another $50 million
I think
by.
it was 104.
Oh, was it 104? Was it?
Yeah, I think it
I
was over
don't quote me on the number, but they need more money to complete it by 2029 or something. Interesting.
I think they should finish it though. They should rebuild it.
They should rebuild
The
it.
heart of the city. It's
Oh, mate, it's
the focal point of the square. So
it's iconic as well. Yeah. I was there last week actually.
oh yeah,
Yeah, good trip.
it's still in pieces.
Yeah.
It's sad to see. But
Okay. The Te Papa Museum in Wellington is made entirely of wood.
myth.
Myth. Yep. It features a lot of extensive wood products in its construction.
Yep.
But it's not entirely made out of wood.
Yeah, I was going to say that the foundations that you can go down and see are very concrete
Very concrete.
and steel. Not much wood in those.
Hey, however, do you know the car park that they're building out at Auckland Airport?
Oh, the timber one.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that's got all timber falling.
I love timber construction.
You don't like timber
Yeah,
construction?
I think if the more timber we can put in the industry, the better.
Yeah.
You get the likes of Timber Lab and Red Stag that are able to, and XLAM able to do these large timber structural members.
Yeah.
So I think the more of that we can do, and the less reliant we are on concrete and steel,
Yeah.
which inherently
Is it unsustainable?
it is unsustainable and it's hard to work with.
Yeah.
And I mean, we a whole other topic on its own, but timber performs better in a fire. So it
Really?
Yeah, it has, as long as you make the member slightly bigger, it only chars by sort of 10 to 15 mils on the outside. So the structural
interesting.
integrity of a piece of timber, if it's 200 mil, the structural integrity is 180.
Oh, yeah.
So it won't burn anymore. Once it chars around the outside, that's it. It stays there.
There's another fact for you.
Fact or myth, let them choose.
Fact or myth? Let them choose, eh? I like that. Okay. The Auckland War Memorial Museum is built on an active volcano.
I'm going to go
Myth or
myth. I
fact?
don't think it's active.
Ooh, fact.
Oh,
Got that one
it's
wrong.
always going to get one wrong.
The Auckland War Memorial Museum sits on top of the remains of Pukekawa, a dormant volcano called in Auckland Domain.
There you go. Hopefully it doesn't explode
Yeah.
or erupt.
Or erupt.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I know which one that is. Okay, cool. I'll get to the next one. The use of BIM technology is mandatory for all government construction projects in New Zealand. That's an interesting one for you.
Myth.
It's a myth.
Yeah.
It's highly recommended,
Yeah.
but and the adoption is increasing.
Yeah.
But the use of BIM is not mandated by the government of New Zealand.
It'd be too expensive.
I think they should, eh?
Oh, definitely should.
From a construction technology
Yeah.
perspective, I think it should be mandated.
I think at a bare minimum, clash detection for services.
Well, clash detection is one thing, but I believe there's so much more you can do
That's
with
what I
a
mean
BIM
as a
model.
bare minimum. Like if you start with clash detection, it saves 100 grand on a project. So
Does it though?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's arguable.
But
For
I
me,
mean-
I don't know. Let's say large scale commercial jobs.
Yes. Yeah. That's what
It's
I'm
still
talking about.
it's still arguable. I still think it may be because one of my previous companies I tried to map this whole process of clash detection and start from which service gets the first right.
Yeah.
So it's obviously your mechanical services.
Yeah.
Then you go layer by layer by layer until you get to your ceiling grid, right?
Yeah.
And you map that process of how you actually get the clash resolved
Yeah.
back into federation for every level.
Yeah. It's a long
Might
process.
just be fucking easier standing on site, redlining it, bringing the
can be.
blocks together, looking up at the ceiling and going, oh, mate, there's a clash there.
Real
What are we
life
going to do
BIM.
about it?
Real life BIM.
In real life BIM, yeah. I'm still not convinced whether clash detection is, or the process of clash detection is something that we have got fine-tuned,
No.
where we're getting efficiencies from it.
Not in New Zealand.
No,
I think overseas they do, but I
Yep.
think BIM can work for junction details. Like obviously weather tightness in New Zealand is a massive issue.
Yeah.
And I think if we can deal with those junctions where one type of cladding meets another, or a window facade meets into a structural member.
Or where a timber pile meets a ground beam.
Yeah, mate, the amount of times I re-detailed that probably a good 100 times when we were doing timber constructions. We used to build these 3-story walk-ups out of timber, and you'd go, cool, we've got a concrete base, with, big foam base inside of it, and it's 800 mil thick, and we've got these big steel connections that come out of it that need to tie into the timber. And you're like, how the hell am I going to get them in there? How do I get the timber to connect in properly? How's it all going to be redone?
Yeah.
And, structural engineers have their idea, and then you go, cool. In the real world, where we've got to build this, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild it here. I don't think BIM can do that at the moment, because it's gonna have to become further down the track. Like it's going to have a lot more investment from people putting information into it, and maybe AI will help with that.
100% will. And I've actually started doing takeoffs from good BIM models with a click of a button.
Yeah,
literally with a click of a button, I can get a full takeoff.
Yeah, so that's game changer.
Oh mate, absolute game changer for me. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot more use cases for BIM that people don't actually realize. Or just a 3D model, the availability 3D model.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the cool shit that I'm doing with 3D models is where I'm actually articulating delay in a methodology.
Oh yeah.
So, you run a simulation of a 4D of your baseline program, and I run the same simulation with an impacted program, clearly showing the start point or the root cause of delay.
Very cool.
With 2 videos. So it's like, when you go into adjudication or mediation, it's easier explaining and communicating to people in short form video.
Yes.
Yeah. Rather than getting them to read series of documents, getting them to understand where the delay originated from and how it impacted the entire project.
Yeah.
So there's more cool shit I'm doing, but so it's all the technology bits that I'm working on.
Yeah. I think we need more of it. Maybe the government should mandate it.
They have to mandate it. I think it's a no-brainer to mandate 3D modeling, at least in government projects.
Yeah. I think
think about how much the government projects cost and how much we pay in variations.
Oh, yeah.
What if we could bring the cost of variations down by having a 3D model? I'm not saying it will.
No,
but I'm saying it likely could.
Yeah, it could over time. And the more time that we work with these types of models, and the more time it's reiterated and everything like that, the better we get at it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm all for that. Okay, last question. Oh, the majority of New Zealand's construction waste must be recycled or reused as part of the resource efficiency movement. Ooh, that's an interesting one.
I'll go myth.
Fact.
It doesn't happen though, does it?
Yeah, okay. So New Zealand has strong initiatives and regulations aimed at reducing waste in construction, promoting recycling and reuse.
Yep.
So
I've been around it.
Yeah.
If you I'll paint a picture because I know we are running out of time. But like if you've got a construction site, they're often space poor. So you've got workers, vehicles that are going to be there. You've got laid down areas for materials. If you then have to have a bin for general waste, a bin for steel, a bin for recycling, and we're talking skip bins, 9 cubic meters. We're not talking little wheelie bins.
I mean, you can't do much of the small bin on a construction site.
A jib bin, polystyrene. You look at all the different types of materials, like a wood bin, all the types of materials that can be on a construction site. The area that you have to have for that, and then the amount of times I've seen them picked up by the same company and they go to the same landfill. That's where my worry goes. Is like there's not enough information out there of how it goes from site to
recycle and reuse.
Yeah, how's it getting recycled? Like we'll give timber bins back to Timber Lab and things like that, and they'll finger joint them up and use them for beams again, which is great. And I know the jib ones, you can send it back to Windstones and they break it down and reuse it as they take the paper off and reuse it for making jib, which is great. But the amount of time that the amount of limited space we have, sometimes we can't have all those bins. So I think we need to do more of it, 100%. I just don't think like mandating it and saying,
you have to do it, but having a plan on how you do it would be more beneficial.
Yeah.
Interesting. More food for thought.
Yeah.
I think I'm liking the segment, eh? I think I might incorporate that as normal part of my process. First time I'm trying it. Thank you for being cool about it.
It was cool, man. It was good.
Yeah. But more so, man, thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for...
Thanks for having me on. It's been great.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, man.
It's a pleasure.